When we open, camera 1 should be on a 4-shot.
All right.
Now, what lens do you have up now?
The wide angle.
Coming through. Watch the boom, please.
Camera 2 will be on a close-up, right?
Right. Could I have a level, please?
All right. Quiet, please. Now, gentlemen, we'll need a level on the voices. Just identify yourselves and tell us where you're from.
My name is Edgar from Ohio State University.
I'm Marshall McLuhan from the University of Toronto.
I'm Gilbert Seldes, the Annenberg School of Communications at the University of Pennsylvania.
And I'm Keith Tyler from Ohio State University.
That's good. Thank you.
All right, let's take it. Camera ready?
Raise that mic a little. Camera's ready.
Sound ready?
Okay.
Quiet, please. This will be a take. Roll it.
Rolling. Speed. Communications Revolution, scene 1, take 1.
Action.
We're going to discuss here for a while this whole matter of the communications revolution. And I suppose by this we mean the fact that in the last few decades we've had the great rise of the modern media, so-called, radio, television, motion pictures, and they've had a profound impact upon our American civilization and, in fact, all of Western civilization. You did a nice job the other day, Mr. Seldes, in kind of delineating what is involved in this, and I think this might be a very good way of beginning.
I think what you have in mind is a reference I made to the variety of scholars who are approaching the field, and I was trying, and still am trying, to assure myself that we're more or less talking about the same subject. I think we are in this sense, that while you have an approach from a sociologist or a philologist or any number of ologists to the subject, we're, on one side, we're all trying to find out what is the nature of the new communications? What is the special nature of each one of the media, such as, say, the moving picture or broadcasting? What is the nature of all of them, all of the mass media, as we call them, put together? And I think that from that, almost everybody in the field certainly isn't satisfied with stopping, deciding what is the essence. We're not Platonists. I think we all then want to say, what do all these media do to us? And then I put my own specialty in, what do we do about them? Now, I don't think I differ too much from you, Mr. McLuhan.
No, I've learned a great deal from your own work, Mr. Seldes, and you were in this field before any of us. And we've toiled along in your footsteps, as it were.
You and I share, however, I'm pretty sure share an enthusiasm for someone else, which is Harold Innes, the Canadian economist.
Yes.
Don't you think that he phrased the essence, really, of the revolution in, you probably know the actual words that he used, of the connection between an enormous change in the means of communication and a change following in society.
You know, McLuhan, you might do what I've known you to do, which is to characterize the former period as the print period and the present period as the electronic period, and kind of point out what sharp distinctions you think are involved
I think one of the things that happens when a new medium comes on the scene, you become aware of the basic characteristics of older media in a way that you were not when they were the only things around. I think we're becoming more aware now of what print is than we were before. Radio seems to have acquired more sense of its own identity since television, and movies likewise. So there's a great advantage in one way in this revolution brought on by a new medium in revealing some of the earlier features of older media, making them more intelligible and more useful, giving us more a sense of control over them and so on.
Which is to say that when we get into this electronic period, we don't give up the print man.
No, it would seem natural that older forms are put to new uses and discover new roles. The book, for example, in our time has discovered many new functions that it never had 50 or 100 years ago. It has become very powerfully directed toward teaching people how to learn other things besides books, how to learn arts of many kinds. The book has taken on a vast new function as a means of informing people, directing people's skills in many, many areas.
Mr. McLuhan, you've sometimes spoken about print as linear. Now, Suzanne Langer, in her book, Psychology in a New Key, speaks of discursive and non-discursive communication. How would you fit this into that scheme that she has developed?
Well, I think people who are subjected to the arrangement of language visually in lines, highly sequential and precise, rigid, develop habits of arranging their lives, arranging their whole social existence, which are very closely geared to these forms. They're not specially aware of this. Lineality, though, is not characteristic of radio or television or movies. And so we have been subjected to tremendous new forces, new influences, which have broken up the older habits acquired from the print world.
Would you say we tend to think in straight lines until we break away from?
We still like to speak of following a person or
Yes,
drawing conclusions in lines.
Yes.
And I don't follow you, or I do follow you, sort of thing. It does suggest, yes, that we think of thought itself.
But notice our contemporary phrase, I dig you.
This is closer, surely, to the medium of television, which, incidentally, has had the strange effect on the young of driving them to the libraries to ask for fact books. The librarians report there's a tremendous new taste in the young for fact books, not fiction.
I'd like to get at one...
Well, I mean, I was thinking the fact book is a thing that you have to dig. You don't read it in a line at just a story level on a single plane. You have to dig a fact book.
Yeah.
And the youngsters today dig their reading. They read in depth.
But in a sense, you're saying that one of the characteristics of this revolution is that people are with things. That is to say, we are communicated with so much more rapidly that we are with the events rather than linearly learning about them afterward, event by event.
But not a merely descriptive or narrative relation or mere point of view relation. You see, if you have a point of view, you're not really with a situation. You have already abstracted an angle, an aspect as yours. In the new situation, being with it, you don't have a point of view. You merely identify at all levels, your whole being.
Well, are you saying that photography and these new arts are more primitive, that we need to abstract less with these new media?
I think the word primitive is misleading, perhaps, but it does suggest people who are less in the habit of abstracting single aspects, single levels, and so on, and who are accustomed to a more inclusive, totally sensuous commitment to situations.
But then, McLuhan, picking up Mr. Dale's primitive, indications are that we will have a less sophisticated general public. You said when you're with it, you no longer need to have a point of view. Well, this is a complaint that's being made. People do not have their own points of view, their own specific individual approaches to things. It has been said, indeed, the mass media have that effect because we all see the same thing and so forth. You were implying that there's something in their own nature that reinforces this.
Yes.
So that when I mentioned the Innes principle, there's a shift, there's a change, the social change that comes as a result of new means of communication. I find the implication of what you say is that it's not going to be a change in favor, shall we say, of the intellect per se.
Well,
will we have less intelligent people?
For example, this being with it, for example, is very characteristic of dialogue. In dialogue with somebody else, you are not maintaining a fixed point of view. You are interchanging, you are interpenetrating, modifying the point of view of each is modified by the dialogue itself. Yes. You do not hold a fixed point of view, which you do in an article in a magazine or a book. You see, this is natural. You set up.
You are saying that that when I'm watching a television show, and I'm speaking now of an entertainment television show, that I'm in some way engaged in it, and I'm with it, and am I engaging in a dialogue with whatever's going on in front of me?
The character of the television image, I think it fosters this kind of participation simply because it is a rather poor image, and it involves the viewer in a great deal of completion of the detail that is missing visually in that image. The act of seeing television is very much that participation, as in reading a detective story where you were very much with it, precisely because you were not given a very much narrative information. You have to fill it in.
I'd like to suggest that this makes the job of the intellectual a good deal harder, because he is with all of these events. He's got consciously to withdraw from them if he's going to have any time for reflection, for interpretation, and indeed for leadership. Otherwise, he's just a part of everything as it goes on, and he never really has time to bring out what the essence of it is.
But I wonder, too, if these photographic processes, these new processes, aren't leading people again back to print. I've heard persons say, for example, well, take Life magazine. They started out, first of all, with a tremendous amount of photographs and shifted to more print. Is it possible, Mr. Tyler, that radio has caused, or devices such as this, has caused people really to read better?
Well, I think certainly all these media interrelate to the extent to which they are used consciously. One of the difficulties, of course, you mentioned radio. This is a hard one because radio is so much used today as a kind of a background for other activities,
Yes,
rather than
for
being
study,
used
especially
directly. Yes, for
the young.
study.
Yeah.
And busy people use radio very often as a kind of a background for a lot of things that they have to do anyway.
Radio actually eliminates the noises or deadens the noises of the family so the children can study by it. I know this happened a long time ago. Happened before I think I was aware of all the implications. Precisely of that, I'd like to, McLuhan, to go a little further, so I was rather superficial about Innes's theory of the change that follows.
His notion that any change in handling information, communication, is bound to cause a great readjustment of all the social patterns, the educational patterns, the sources and conditions of political power, public opinion patterns will change. But he got onto that track rather interestingly. You see, as an economic historian, he had been studying railways and the cod fisheries, the fur trade, and the pulp, paper, and he moved then from staples as forms of shaping economic life to media as staples. And he began to study the new media as really basic economic resources. And much as, for example, cotton in the South has shaped a whole culture, now radio is shaping a global culture. It's global in the extent of its resource availability. So that what would appear to be in the offing is a global culture conformable to a staple like radio, as the Southern culture was conformable to cotton.
But then he went on, the simple example that after print came in, the whole feudal system broke.
Yes.
Now, what I'm worried about, and he didn't live long enough to predict it even, is what is going to break? Where is the shift in power going to be at the present time?
The tremendous developments that we made in individual, private habits of study, isolated effort, inner direction, and so on, these are likely to take the rap from media that are so inclusive of the whole of society and at all levels. Think of the tremendous shift in political power that is going on at this moment through the use of television in politics.
Well, now, I really wonder about that. I have, in the past 30 years, observed only one demagogue using a visual medium. That was Huey Long and movies. I'm told that he was very good in radio when he would start a talk. And he would say, friends, I'm not going to say anything of importance for the next minute and a half. You get on the telephone and call up a couple of friends and get them to listen to this program. There was a very clever demagogic use, but the only time he scared me was when I saw him in movies in a newsreel, when I thought he really had the power.
And McCarthy folded in a week after he went on television. If Huey Long had gone on the TV, he would have been a flop at once. TV will not take a sharp character, a hot character. It's a cool medium. And our politics are being cooled off to the point of rigor mortis, according to many people.
Why won't it do it? Why not?
The nature of this medium, which calls for so much participation, does not give you a completed package, a completed image. You have to make your image as you go. Therefore, if the person who comes in front of the TV camera is already a very complete and classifiable type of person, a politician, a highly obvious doctor type, lawyer type, the medium rejects him because there's nothing left for the audience to view or to complete. And they say, this guy's a phony. There's something wrong with this guy.
I'd like to have you react to this notion that since the founding of our country, we've had the balance of power progressively go from a very small group that were voting, and had property rights and so on, gradually spread to a larger and larger group. Now, how does television fit into this? We have practically universal television as far as it being in the homes is concerned. Does this mean that the power more and more is flowing really to the popular group?
Yes,
to the masses?
literally, the participation of the whole population in the political process becomes very deep. And where it's no longer a question of assessing arguments, platforms, regional clashes, and so on, everybody is with it.
All age deep.
All age groups. Yes, the issues are no longer given to you on single planes and single patterns. They are total.
But this is a very good point about being deep. Is this actually a kind of a pseudo-event? I mean, you think you were with reality, but really, you are having prepared for you on television those aspects they want you to see, which gives you a feeling of participation you may not really have.
The audience is making a new form of association among its own members. They are making a new reality,
In other words,
new art form.
You don't think we're learning more things superficially?
No.
You don't?
No, this is an age in which in the new criticism or psychology or anything else, the word used in all these forms is depth. It's
Yes, I know.
reading in depth, psychology in depth, everything now
But
is in depth.
these are the relatively few experts and outsiders.
No.
Your implication now is, it seems to be the opposite of what you were saying a few minutes ago. And I'm not trying to trap you, Marshall. I'm trying to find out. But at one point, it is my understanding that the thing we need to be troubled about by these mass media is their creation of the non-individualistic person, the man who is with it, so he's with what everyone is doing, to use what is now the hackneyed word, it's the conforming person. On the other side, you were saying that, however, television can be used to convey information in depth, and the implication is it can actually be used to make people think.
The forms of entertainment that work best on television, whether it's Padishevsky or even the Power Show, are ones which admit of a great deal of casualness, in which people can be introduced and dialogued with in the presence of the camera at all sorts of levels of their lives. You capture them at all sorts of strange and offbeat moments of their existence. And this kind of probing and peeling off the superficial aspects of people and so on is normal to this medium. It is a depth medium. The movie medium is, by comparison, very much a photographic slick package medium, which gives you a very highly defined and a very slick, complete package.
But I still want to go back to a question I asked earlier, which is that with this feeling of being with everything, isn't there still the need, even more so, for at least the intellectual, and I would think more and more everyone, to abstract himself from being with and have time for reflection and for becoming, let's say, an individual rather than simply a conformist masked man?
Well, intellectuals don't necessarily require privacy. They need the stimulus of intellectual conversation. And
Well, they can, think,
yes, but you can do a great deal of thinking in the course of a prolonged dialogue with able people. And,
but not a dialogue with television.
That is precisely where I'm with you. Can we really be thinking, except at the time when we've stopped looking?
This is a good time, I think, to bring up a point that when any new form comes into the foreground of things, we naturally look at it through the old stereos.
Yes,
we can't help that. This is normal, and we're still trying to see how will our previous political and educational patterns persist under television. We're just trying to fit the old things into the new form, instead of asking, what is the new form going to do to all the assumptions we had before? This is not necessarily good.
And we are all, I think all of us here learn to read, and we therefore protect books. But in the books we can read that when the book came in, it was denounced because people were being studied from books, and they said, well, how can you study from books without the authority of the teacher there? Now we say, how can you have television in the schoolroom without the authority of the book? I see that, but I'm not sure that there doesn't come a point when the enormity, I was going to say, the vast amount of what we can get from our new media doesn't really, to an extent, make it unnecessary to think deeply and maybe difficult to think. I'm dubious.
There's another point, too, here. It seems to me that with television or with film, it's moving along at a continuous speed. In other words, you haven't any way of checking it. Now, with a book, you can check it. You can go back. You've got a kind of record.
Yeah.
And we can't assume that a person is going to get a videotape or is going to arrange to have this film rerun in the theater. So you don't get a chance to check certain of these new media. You just have to take it as it comes along.
On the other hand, the degree to which, when reading, that you are in the hands of an author, the degree to which he merely carries you along for a ride, passively, has always been bypassed and not discussed by book readers. They have the illusion of being engaged in great private intellectual discovery. Actually, they're going for a ride.
I begin to see that we're talking about the importance of whoever the individual is who's in front of these media. He's got to be active in his response, which suggests something that Seldes likes to point out, that we ought to be doing something in classrooms at all levels to make, let's say, more discriminating consumers out of people so that they don't just look at this instrument, but they react positively to it.
I want a race of critics. At what age they should begin, I don't know. But I think you can't begin too early.
Well,
We have, I think, in North America, education generally, we have not encouraged criticism 16 years and after. The Europeans have always stressed criticism as a value in the young after 16.
It's quite clear, gentlemen, we've raised a lot of questions, and we're not going to answer them in one short discussion.
Surely, it's very valuable to get these things out there for inspection, to know what are the relevant issues.
Right.
And reproof, possibly, if necessary.
Cut. Save the lights.